With the current conditions we are in, lots of people are thinking of creating podcasts, which is a very cool and hip way to keep busy and have fun. For any of our listeners thinking of starting a podcast, we like to recommend Anchor. When we started out, we chose Anchor because it's free, and we all like free, am I right? Plus, it is so easy to use, especially for Aaron since he spends tedious amounts of time editing each of our episodes. It has tools that eliminate the need for expensive software, which is great because why spend the extra money when it's all accessible with Anchor? And you can start making money from your very first podcast. Ka-chang, ka-chang, bring home the bacon. And get this, it distributes your episodes for you to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to Millennials with Mikes, discussions about movies, politics, religion, and more. I'm Aaron Mason.
And I'm Christian Stevens.
Today we'll be talking about literature and authors.
Yes, we have three categories we're going into for today's podcast. The first one to kick us off is a few of the most memorable, beloved authors in history. And I just have like a short list here. There's a few of the best, not necessarily my favorites, but just some of the better ones. Roald Dahl, for sure, is one of my all-time favorites, though. He wrote the Charlie and Willy Wonka Factory Adventures. Matilda. James and the Giant Peach. Yes, he did.
That's interesting.
And James and the Giant Peach. Some of those very classic children books that we all remember and loved.
He also kind of goes into... he could go into movies, too, because he did some...
He did some screenplays.
He did some television writing.
Yeah, that's true.
He did one of the Bond movies, I know.
Mm-hmm, Thunderball. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a writer, I guess you could just go into other things, too, not just books. I mean, you could do screenplays and stuff. Cormac McCarthy did that, who wrote No Country for Old Men, wrote the screenplay for The Counselor.
Yeah.
So,
That's
it goes hand in hand, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'd
say he's one of the most beloved, iconic authors in history. What do you have, Aaron?
My first one would be Arthur Conan Doyle.
Nice.
Obviously, Sherlock Holmes there. I honestly don't know if he wrote anything else. I'm sure he must have.
He probably has written a few little things, but Sherlock Holmes was his...
Clearly what he's best known for.
Precisely.
Yeah. And that's one's like I think we both read all of the Sherlock Holmes
Adventures,
stories in the complete series, or in the complete Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. They're all, I would say, fairly intriguing. Some of them are obviously lots of short stories, several novels in there. He did a really good job with those characters, keeping it interesting.
Definitely. And Sherlock Holmes, I mean, that's, kind of like Bond. He's just such a fantastic, fictitious character. That's what we've had. So many movies and series and adaptions and books. It's just like, it's an iconic thing, and it's going to live on for generations and generations, and that's definitely why he's one of the most memorable authors for sure. It's funny that you mentioned him, best known for Sherlock Holmes, because the other one I had on my list was Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass, which is by and by his biggest thing novel-wise. I think he wrote a couple of small little novellas and short things, but nothing that was really like memorable of his. But yeah, I mean, Alice in Wonderland, that's a classic, British fun child story. That's also been done many times through different film adaptations and, iconic quotes, and such an imagination he had with that. I mean, Lewis Carroll, he's one of those, he mustn't have been sober when he was writing. He's like one of those great musicians like the Beatles. He must have been on acid or some LSD.
You never know.
Tripping on mushrooms, because, I mean, what a psychedelic
I was just reading about him, and apparently, in addition to writing, he was also a mathematician, photographer, and church deacon.
Mathematician, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Church deacon, that's also very interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
But no, I mean, Alice in Wonderland, both of them have, but Alice in Wonderland, you know, like you said, lots of adaptions. The famous Disney, both famous Disney adaptions, of course. Multiple other independent adaptions to having nothing to do with Disney.
That's true.
I think actually Gene Wilder, I think one of his last roles was in a made-for-TV adaptation as the Caterpillar.
Really?
In Alice in Wonderland, if I'm not mistaken. One
I
of
have
his
not
last roles,
seen
if
that.
not his last role. I haven't either.
He'd be a dope blue caterpillar, but not as
Alan
awesome
Rickman
as
was
Alan
so
Rickman.
good.
Oh man, may he rest in peace. That was like I think one of his last 2 projects where he died
Yeah.
was Through the Looking Glass.
So, someone else on my list, you actually mentioned the series when I was talking about Sherlock Holmes, but Ian Fleming with the 007 series. Now, he wrote other things too.
Yeah.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is
Oh,
one
right.
of the notable things that comes to mind. So, James Bond 007 isn't the only thing he did, but it is probably by far one of the better known things. I put this on here because, not that I think he was just a fabulous writer or anything. I just finished Casino Royale, the book.
Right.
Casino Royale, which was the first James Bond book. I have the rest of the Bond books on the way. He wrote 14 of them altogether before he passed away. Some other people wrote some other Bond books.
So he wrote less books than there are movies for sure.
Yes.
Damn.
He certainly did. And it is interesting, though. Some of the movies actually, like 2 movies will cover one book's, like what happened in one book.
Oh, how
like
interesting.
Octopussy is a movie. The Living Daylights is a movie.
That's right.
The book is
Was The Living
Octopussy and
Daylights.
The Living Daylights.
That's right.
And then, of course, one of the books, I think For Your Eyes Only, was actually a collection of short stories. That's where Quantum of Solace came from. That was one of the short stories. Had nothing to do with the plot of the movie. But yeah, so just interesting little things like that. Anyways, like I said, I put this on here not because I think he's just a fantastic writer. He was good. Like Casino Royale, the book was good.
Right.
I put it on here because I really think that his writing for a spy novel was really unique in the fact that he worked for British intelligence during World War II. The character of M in the Bonds was based off of his commander. Some of the Bond storylines, Bond himself, and things like that were based on Ian Fleming himself, other spies that he worked with, and things that happened with him or with people he worked with in general.
Yeah.
And to me, that gives a very different realistic feel to his works in spy books.
Yeah.
More so than whoever wrote Jack Reacher, Jack Ryan, the Bourne books. Not to say those are bad books, but like they're not written by people who actually did what they're writing about, although they are fiction.
Ian Fleming, though, he kind of set the literature stage for...
Like, there were some spy things before that, but, like, his was the first commercially successful series, I feel like, that was actual spies like we think of them today. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I mean, like I said, like, there's something to be said about, fictition or not, taking some literary license. There's something to be said about actually having done what you're writing about, fiction or not.
Yeah, it's rooted from actual experience, not just pure imagination.
Imagination is so important. It really is.
Oh, it is.
And I've heard that Ian Fleming had extreme delusions of grandeur in some cases.
Well, good.
But
good for his
so
writing.
did Bond. So did the character. I think it really did him well. So, who else do you have on your list?
For some of the beloved authors in history who is still with us today, Stephen King. Not by any means my personal favorite author, but he's a very iconic author. He's written
absolutely.
tons and tons of great things. And I mean, there's hardly anything that not trying to say that only good authors had film or TV adaptations made from them, but it does say a lot, though, that, I mean, The Shining, Doctor Sleep. People bought
there too, period, yeah.
It, Misery, Carrie, all these things that's been done are fantastic, pieces of literature. He's one of those very imaginative, twisted visionaries who can write, miles and miles of words and kind of go off the rails. I think I've mentioned that before. He goes off the deep end with a lot of, and that's the only times where I feel like he kind of loses it, is when he can't stay on the subject path. But his offness and the way he derives and goes off, I mean, that's always material for, because he saw a big universe in his projects.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's always good ideas for, like, sidequels, spin-offs, prequel books, whatever, if you wanted to, kind of like how he came up with Doctor Sleep for The Shining. It was such a bigger world to him that he already had a sequel-y type.
Yeah.
What happened after this going on? So, I mean, his brain is definitely bigger than the pages that he puts on. But no, I mean,
I think it is interesting too that, like, obviously he's best known, rightfully so, for horror movies or horror in general, thriller, things like that.
Mostly, yeah. He's done quite a bit of drama work too.
Yeah, I mean, Shawshank Redemption comes to mind as probably the most popular.
The Dark Towers.
Dark Towers, that's kind of a sci-fi feel, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
The Green Mile.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of very popular things out there that I feel like a lot of people don't realize are based on Stephen King things. Like, they wouldn't necessarily associate with Stephen King unless you told them.
That's true.
Even that 11/22/63, that James Franco miniseries that they did on Hulu several years ago, that's based on a Stephen King thing.
How crazy.
So just several things like that. And yeah, he's, like you said, I'm sure a lot of the books I've seen of his are really big. And I mean, we've talked about it before. That kind of wanders all over the place.
Yeah, it does.
But I mean, yeah, it's fantastic writer, good stories. Many adaptations.
Absolutely.
The last one I have on my list is Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, of course.
Everyone
quoth the Raven.
Quoth the Raven, yeah. And that's, the Raven is probably his most popular work. Even people who've never read it know that that's him. A lot of people may or may not know he died under sort of mysterious circumstances when he was 40, I believe, in Baltimore.
That's right.
And part of what made him so popular in the long term, I think, was his death, maybe initially. I'm sure a lot of people might not know that now.
The mystery behind all. And
yeah. I mean, they even did a movie about it called The Raven back, probably 10 years ago or so now.
That was a fun movie.
It was. John Cusack, Luke Evans.
Yeah.
It was a good movie. But, I have the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, one of those nice Barnes & Noble
edition collection things. Yeah.
Read it, a lot of poems. It was more than just, he's known for horror and thriller and things like that. Lots of poems, lots of romance stuff in there.
Tragic love stories.
And that is reflective of his life as well.
Yeah, it is.
Really just one tragedy, be it personal or romantic, one tragedy after another. Very, very tragic individual. But all of his works are very interesting in one way or another. And I think that that's something that is kind of forgotten a lot of times, that he was more than just horror. Like, a lot of his stuff was very moving. But...
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Well, was that the last of your beloved authors?
It is, actually. Okay. Yeah.
Our next category would be some personal favorites. And obviously all of these are kind of going to reflect some personal favorites to a certain degree.
Since we actually picked these for... Yeah, that's true. But ones that actually hit more, like, to home, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of our like favorites.
So
But,
what do you have?
well, right off the bat, which I was gonna put as she is a beloved author in history, but also one of my personal favorites is Agatha Christie, who wrote most famously known for her, mystery novels of the Hercule Poirot stories, both short stories and the iconic books of like Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, The Curtain, all fantastic books. Which I haven't read a lot of her other material besides the
Because
ones.
she wrote so much.
She did.
Like, so much of what she wrote was ridiculously popular.
Yeah, but I always remember like just the writing and the way she sets the scenes, and she wrote some stuff.
Yeah.
And she's a fantastic, murder mystery type author for sure. And she wrote, and each of her books were just so different from another. They weren't just repetitive.
Yeah.
They were all such fresh, kind of like the Sherlock Holmes stories.
Yeah.
She can just write tons and tons and tons of these things.
I think it's interesting too. Like, something I think a lot of people don't realize is really how modern she was. Like, she died in 1976. Like, I know that's damn near 50 years ago now. But, like, when I think of Agatha Christie and her things, like,
that, yeah.
I think of, like, Victoria, and I don't know why.
Because she always kind of felt like that.
Yeah, I feel like Victorian era.
Yeah.
Around or before Arthur Conan Doyle and the Sherlock Holmeses, which were right around the turn of the century. But
which is what inspired her to do Hercule was...
very clearly an inspiration.
Very clearly, yeah.
But still a good and different character. So many people have been inspired by Sherlock Holmes. Or,
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, it's one of those people you might not realize was as modern as her works were. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, pretty relevant stuff.
Yeah. One of my personal favorites, a lot of people love his acting. He was one of the big comedy actors of the 70s and 80s, was Gene Wilder. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't even know that he wrote. He did
in his later years, huh?
Yeah, he didn't. I don't think he wrote anything until after he retired from the film industry.
That's right.
The first thing he wrote, I believe, was his biography, Kiss Me Like a Stranger. It goes through pretty much his entire life, from childhood through just after Gilda Radner passed away, until his third marriage, I guess. Or his marriage after Gilda Radner, I think it was his third and his last. But yeah, it goes up pretty much till what was modern with when the book was written. Very personal, very detailed, almost overly personal in some senses. A lot of people don't do that in their autobiographies. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed that. Then he also wrote 3 or 4 fiction books. They're all fairly small books. If you just sat down and read the whole thing from cover to cover, it takes 2-3 hours, something like that. 100, 200 pages, somewhere in there. But the 2 in particular, he wrote more than this, but one titled My French Whore, set during World War I, and then The Woman Who Wouldn't. That is my absolute favorite. Set around the turn of the century in Switzerland or Germany. Actually, both, I think. But both in a in a semi-historical period with some historical figures, but very much fiction books. They're both very, very well written, both very moving as well for being as short of books as they are. They really drew me in.
He had a lot of heart.
He really did.
He did.
But that's my first one.
Interesting. My other one, may he rest in peace. This is probably my all-time favorite, is Hunter S. Thompson. Mm-hmm. The revered American journalist, which I know a lot of people aren't familiar with him or his work, even though he's one of the more recent. He passed away in 2005.
Yeah.
So he hasn't been gone for that long, but invented gonzo journalism, his own fashion of journalism. And he did a lot of a lot of articles, a lot of journalistic things on the campaign trail of Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Had a lot on George Bush, a lot of political stuff. He's also did a lot of sports stuff.
Really?
Oh yeah, and
I didn't know that.
Fear and Loathing Las Vegas. It's all on the Kentucky Derby, which is why he initially goes there.
Okay.
He also, later in his years, and he's not big on doing sports articles, but he did covers on Super Bowls and other things. But yeah, I mean, so that goes to my first favorite was Fear and Loathing Las Vegas. He wrote that and The Rum Diary. His only couple of novels within all the other pieces of work he's done. Those two he used were like fiction, non-fiction characters.
Because I know The Rum Diary was like based off of his early life, starting out in journalism.
Starting off in journalism, doing a part in Puerto Rico, and he went for his character was Paul Kemp. And then like in Fear and Loathing Las Vegas, Raoul Duke, which Raoul Duke was an actual alias he would use in his actual works when he would send out letters and stuff like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he didn't always go by his name.
Now, in both of those movie adaptations, those characters were played by Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, that's right.
Okay.
And it's funny.
They were very close.
A lot of people think he's the only one who ever portrayed Hunter, but they did. It was not highly praised or received well. But Where the Buffalo Roam, before those two, was a film that was based on Hunter S. Thompson and his quirkiness and his acts and stuff like that. More like a semi-biographical based movie, which was portrayed by Bill Murray.
Oh, okay.
But Bill Murray's performance was more like a what's the best way to put that? Like a skit. Like he was doing an impression of Hunter.
Oh, okay.
Not really being Hunter. Kind of like how Depp got into it.
Kind of like on like doing a skit on Saturday Night Live or something like that.
Precisely, which is what Bill Murray was on.
Oh, okay.
For the longest time.
Yeah.
But no, Hunter S., I mean, he wrote so many brilliant pieces of work. Hell's Angels, The Campaign Trail of 72, Rolling Stones. But yeah, those two novels for sure, Rum Diary and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, are some great pieces of work. So yeah, that's one of my all-time favorites. What's your next on your list?
My next would be Thomas Harris, the man who wrote the Hannibal Lecter series.
Ooh.
He has written, he is alive, he has written other books. He had a book come out just late last year, I think. Not related to Hannibal Lecter. But I put him on my list of favorites for the Hannibal Lecter series. So I have Thomas Harris on here for the Hannibal Lecter series personally. There are 4 books, there are 4 movies, there are 4 books. In chronological order, storyline-wise, you have Hannibal Rising, Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, and Hannibal. Now, written-wise, they were written, Red Dragon was first, then Silence of the Lambs, then Hannibal, and then, interesting with Hannibal Rising, Dino De Laurentiis, the man who owned the rights to the films, or owned the rights to the character Hannibal Lecter in the late 90s or early 2000s, he told Thomas Harris, this is really kind of shitty of him, but he told Thomas Harris, I'm making a movie about Hannibal Lecter's background, whether
you like it or
have input or not. I wanted to do this. I think people want to do this. And I'm doing it. So Thomas Harris actually had to kind of rush to put together. Like there was some backstory throughout, sprinkled through the 3 books that were published at the time.
Yeah.
But not really enough to have a definitive, this is what happened in his early life. So he really had to rush.
Interesting.
To try to write one of these movies. Which for someone with a personality like his, I would definitely go look him up.
But like, so did he rushed this book because they knew they were to make it a movie?
Yes.
Or why not just say, do a movie, I don't care what you write about?
Because it was his character.
So he felt compelled
for the character's sake, for the series' sake, he felt compelled to be the one.
He had to write the...
Yes.
Right, okay.
Which is completely understandable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Not fair of Dino De Laurentiis to make him do that at all. But honestly, out of the 4 books, though, you can tell it was a bit rushed. when you're reading it, but like that's honestly my favorite book out of all four.
Interesting.
Silence of the Lambs would be next, and then Red Dragon would be next. Hannibal, I didn't really care for at all, book-wise. It's a good movie. They're all four good movies.
It is a good movie, yeah.
But my least favorite book among the four. But no, that's...
Interesting.
And I want to read whatever came out recently. He hadn't written anything in 15, 20 years almost.
Oh, Jesus.
But he's definitely a very personal man, very reclusive. He just granted his first interview in like 15 or 20 years, shortly before this book came out.
Christ.
He's got some money. He's in his twilight years. He doesn't really need the bother anymore, you know?
Yeah, I mean...
Can't say I blame him.
Any people with their... who's pretty much retired and don't really have to do anything. I mean...
Yeah.
You'll see a seldom thing here and there, you know? It's like George Clooney coming out with a movie.
Yeah.
He don't really have to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand that.
Who's next on your list?
One of the most popular and relevant movie writers of today who wrote his first ever book, Cold Storage, by David Coop. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Should introduce him first. David Coop, fantastic writer, and he's directed a few things too.
Now, what movies has he done? Been associated with?
He's written such big movies like Mission Impossible, Indiana Jones 4, Jurassic. Well, granted, but the Jurassic Parks.
Oh, okay.
He's also directed Spider-Man, the one with Tobey Maguire.
Oh, okay.
War of the Worlds.
Huh.
He directed and wrote Secret Window, Ghost Town.
Now, Secret Window was based off of Stephen King, though.
Yes, that was based off of a short story from a Stephen King novel.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. One of my favorite ones. He also wrote the screenplay for the... What's his name? Tom Hanks trilogy.
Tom Hanks.
Where he did Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, Inferno.
Yeah.
He wrote those two. And so he's written a lot of big blockbusters. Yeah. And then he wrote a book, Cold Storage, which is about a bacteria, like a bacterial parasite, like a fungi that rapidly grows and is very infectious, gets into the pores and kind of takes over the host's modem functions and stuff, and like pretty much is like a spreading plague in a zombie-like situation. And the government, when they get a hold of this thing, keep it in a storage facility and like very, very cold storage for years and years and years before the temperature comes back up where it starts to spread out. And they have to contain the thing before it actually becomes a worldwide issue.
That's interesting.
It's well written. I mean, he's made great characters in that book. It's so greatly written. He's so engaging, and like it's hard to put it down. Like that was one of the most brilliant things I've read. And since he is a movie writer, producer, and sometimes director, I could see a film adaptation of this. And I mean, the book is written to such a way. There's no reason why from book to screen you couldn't just use that as a screenplay, really, because there's no reason to play with it. It's just it's brilliant as is. But so David Cope, just for his first book, I'd say he's onto something, and I hope he writes more stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The last person on my list, another person kind of like Gene Wilder, very popular in their own right outside of writing. But I don't know that as many people know that he has written things, is Penn Jillette.
True, though. True.
He hasn't written any fiction, to my knowledge. It's all been nonfiction, biographical, semi-biographical things. God No is one, going over, I think the subtitle of that is like, God No, Signs You May Be an Atheist and Other Tales, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Every Day is an Atheist Holiday. That's a very interesting one. He goes over like all of the Christian holidays and like an atheist perspective to them and what his family does and things like that, and then some other holidays. It's very interesting.
I could have an insight into that book.
And then Presto, about how he lost weight, and then there's some other personal stuff in there too that's not just about weight and diet, but that is the...
He did lose some weight, didn't he?
Oh, he lost like 200 pounds. Like, he was a big guy.
He was a big guy,
and
yeah.
he got some health issues, and he changed his life.
I mean, John Goodman did.
Yeah, he more than John Goodman did.
Oh, really?
But
good for him.
He really did lose some
Drew
weight.
Carey's a better example.
He gained a lot of that weight back, though, Drew Carey.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, poor guy.
The last few years. Like, he's not quite as big as he was, but, like, he definitely gained a lot of that back.
Interesting.
Penn Jillette's gained some of his back, too, but he's not nearly as big as he was.
And he's
still
a lot
smaller.
older.
He is older, like Penn Jillette's in his 60s.
Yeah.
But no, Presto, there is... Like, just from the cover and the subtitle, you would think it was just about how he lost the weight and diet and things like that. And a lot of the book is about that. But a lot of it isn't. There's a lot in there just about his family and about him and things like that. All three very, very interesting. And I would recommend all three to anybody. He's a funny guy.
So he's written just the three?
I believe so. Those are definitely the three main ones.
I mean, he's still doing shows in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, I mean, whenever they...
so he's still active in other things, too.
Yeah, like, they only have one night a week off in that. So, yeah. Yeah, it does look like just the three. He might have done guest spots in a couple other things. But, yeah, those are the three main. And...
That's cool.
And it's one of those things, like, if you're into audiobooks at all, I would definitely recommend the audiobooks.
I remember that's where I heard it from, because you were playing audio for a while.
Because he narrates, or he reads the audiobooks himself, and his Penn and Teller's act is as much comedy as it is magic, and he is just a funny guy in general without trying to be, and...
He's a natural talent, natural comedian by nature, yeah.
And just the way... You lose something reading it on a page versus hearing it from him. So those are ones in particular. Like, I read most everything. I'll listen to the audiobook while reading the physical book.
I noticed you do that, yeah.
Because I like throwing away money, apparently. But, like, I find it more enjoyable. I'm able to...
understand and follow through with it more by hearing another voice.
And not getting distracted by hearing other things, hearing a dog barking outside or something going on outside.
That's one... I don't listen to audiobooks, but that's one thing. Like, when I wake up in the morning, I have my coffee and I read my book, it's gotta be... it's gotta be quiet. Because, there are moments where you hear the trash or the dogs and the barking, and then it's like... Then you lose concentration for a minute. Then you have to get back into, like...
Where you were. You have to go back a couple lines and...
Get back into the thing.
And so that's like, I'll... Especially now, like, I'll just put my headphones on and pick up the book and start reading.
And see, that helps zone out everything
It
else.
really does. I find that very helpful. Certain books, like the really nonfiction books, more so than anything else, if it's a fiction book... That's one of those that I have to just sit down, read it while I'm listening to it. Non-fiction books, I treat a little differently. Like, I will listen to those anywhere, anytime.
Okay.
I'll listen to it in the shower. I'll listen to it when I'm going to the store, on my way to work, things like that. And when I'm home and want to read, I'll read along with it still. But, like, non-fiction books, I'll just read anytime. Anywhere.
Oh, okay.
On the go. Audio, obviously. And that's what I've done.
I have a hard time concentrating when I do that.
It's very therapeutic for me.
Interesting.
Because, like, I really get into, when I'm driving, I really get into whatever's playing. Like, I'm paying attention. But as much as I'm paying attention to the road, I'm very focused on the music that's playing. And I find the same with the audiobooks. And, like, that's how I read all three of Penn Jillette's books.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, but, with Penn Jillette's in particular, I would definitely recommend the audiobooks for those. You have them on YouTube, so you don't have to go pay for them.
Right.
So
yeah, that's always an option for those who want to do something via audio without paying for the... Yeah, that's true.
And that's the end of my personal favorites. I think you have one more.
I do. It's funny how some of these authors are known for just one specific thing. this guy for sure. Cairo Bonfiglioli. He was an art dealer, an aficionado. He was an English art dealer. He was a magazine editor and a comic novelist. He was known for his eccentric writing for the Mordecai novels.
Oh, okay.
And so he wrote. There's technically 5 books.
Yeah.
He wrote the 3 Don't Point That Thing at Me, After You with the Pistol, Something Nasty in the Woodshed. And then he wrote a prequel book on his ancestors called All the Tea in China.
On Mordecai's ancestors.
On Mordecai. So yeah, the first 3 were based on Charlie Mordecai. All the Tea in China, that's a prequel kind of spin-off type thing.
Okay.
And which is pretty funny. And then before he died, he was in the middle of writing The Great Mordecai Mustache Mystery. And he passed away, and then one of his friends or co-writers or something like that finished the book for him. And he did a really good job following suit with what Carl was doing. But what's cool is that he wasn't really an author himself. He was an English art dealer. And sort of like Ian Fleming, he wrote these witty, eccentric, Pink Panther-like black comedy novels on an English art dealer aficionado, Charlie Mordecai. And so they're very short novels. They're not very long at all. They're like maybe between 250 pages.
Yeah.
And so they're easy reads, and they're fun, and they're funny. If you're into like Pink Panther and that kind of like English slapstick type thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's worth the read. He was pretty insightful and hilarious. So that's it for me on my personal favorites.
So our last section here is books we recommend to our audience to check out. Before we move on into that section, I do want to say something about at least mine. I'm sure some of yours could be said about this too. One of my biggest issues with reading historically as a kid, as a teenager, as an adult, whatever, has always been finishing a book. Because, when I think of a book traditionally, I think of something that's, 300-400 pages, 500 pages. Some books are over 1,000 pages for that matter.
Yes.
That just takes forever. And that's a dedication. Like, you are dedicating to starting something, and it's like a big project.
And that's how I am when it comes to watching a TV show, reading a book, or any sort of like marathon type thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, even if it's hard to see it through, I have to see it through. Even when there's times I really want to put that book down because I'm getting exhausted. Like, it took me a while to read because there are times where I'm just
that's
like...
That's a big fucking book.
And it was a big fucking book, but I also didn't want to start reading another book when I was in it.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. I can't read more than one book at a time because then I just, my mind's somewhere else. But no, I understand what you're saying. If it's a book that you feel like, ooh, I'm not sure if I'm going to be into this or dive into this, it's easy for people to kind of like forget about it.
And it's daunting enough at times that people might not want to start reading novels or books because that's what they associate with them. And so I just want to, for most of mine, I would say with the exception of the Thomas Harris books, take those out. The rest of my selections, the ones that we've gone over and the ones that we're about to, they're all rather short. Like, I would dare say that with the exception of the Thomas Harris books, all of mine, if you split up the Sherlock Holmes ones, everything that I've said so far is under 300 pages.
But I'll say if it's under 300 pages, that's
under 300,
short.
350 pages. That's as long as any of mine have been so far. Mm-hmm. And like I do think that's important. I think enough millennials, people of our generation, don't read books like they should.
Oh no. It's pretty seldom to find people who actually enjoy.
A lot. That is one thing for the older generations. Like that's that I do think that they beat us at, just as generations as a whole, on a case-by-case basis, that's very much going to change, of course. But I think that millennials, we're a lot of times very involved in reading this news on an app or on social media.
What's on Twitter and stuff.
Or what's on Netflix and things like that. And, like, God knows we both do that, too.
Sure.
We, on a normal year, which 2020 is not, in a normal year, we average about one movie in theaters a week.
On average.
On average. We both watch TV shows, things like that. So, like, we spend a lot of time with our eyes looking at screens.
Oh, that's a lot.
But we both read.
It's nice to find something in your day. Like, people wake up, and if all you can think of is, like, what's on the TV, you're going to get bored pretty fast, and you're going to be kind of, like, sitting there lazy.
Because, like, I mean,
that gets exhausting, too.
Yeah, like, Netflix and Hulu is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Like, we all have our pet shows from these streaming services. But, like, other than those 2 or 3 shows on each one, you're bored and you go and look on something. You're like, my God, why do I subscribe to this? This one thing that has a season for, like, 3 months. Other than that, I don't watch anything on this because it all sucks.
Yeah.
And, like, that's...
So you have a bunch of streaming apps just to watch little things and a lot of these things.
And that's, that's nothing against the streaming apps. I mean, you take all the crap that they have on there together and you divide that by 10 personality types, you're going to fill all of them.
There's times where, like, with movies and stuff, you can learn something from anything you watch.
No, I think filmmaking and TV is a great medium for educating yourself, if used in the right way.
But people also need to just open a book and, any sort of book. Even if it's, for us, too, a lot of them are derived from things that were made into movies and TV shows.
Sure, but that's not necessarily how we even knew about them.
Not always. No, that's true. But in general, just, turn a page other than just flip a screen.
And so that is one thing I want to say. Like, for anybody out there who's like, oh, all these sound interesting, I don't, I can't commit to a book. Most of mine, and some of yours I know, are things that could be read. Like, even if you just set aside, like, 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. Most of these things are things that could be read or finished from cover to cover within 2 weeks.
Sure.
Just 15, 20 minutes a day, that's it. So I just do want to say, like, if that's what you're thinking, that is the type of person that I am. And so, like, we are mindful of that. What we're picking isn't just for that. It just so happens that a lot of mine are, and some of your are, coincidentally, shorter.
Yeah.
And
I personally enjoy reading shorter books too, because it's, I mean, like you say, if you're going to get a thick book like It or something like that.
I remember when you read that shit was draining on you.
It was. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
And, like, reading all the short stories to, like, Sherlock Holmes and the Hercule Poirot, I mean, that's a bunch of stories in itself. And those are thick books. So I can understand if you want to find a book, but in a shorter one that's a more easy breezy, kind of be done 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops type thing.
Yeah.
But, just do it,
So, okay, moving on to the third section.
Yes.
Books we recommend for our audience to check out. So, and this is true regardless of the times, I would say.
Yeah, and I'd say this isn't like...
Not just for quarantine.
Right. I mean...
Like, these are books I would recommend to anybody anytime.
Precisely. This one I've read a couple of times, and the first time was in English class in high school. The Crucible.
Ooh, that's a good one.
By Arthur Miller. It's a short story. It's not very long, and but it's a fantastic piece of literature that's based on true events. The Salem Witch Trials. If you haven't, do read it. That's a good one. Oh, look, you got a copy of the book right here?
I do have a copy of the book, actually. And it is very good. It is, I think for this one, it's interesting to note that you're reading, I mean, Arthur Miller was married to Marilyn Monroe. He was married to a few people, but he was Marilyn Monroe's last husband. They divorced before she passed away. But he was a playwright. I think he did write some actual novels and things like that, but he was a playwright. When you read The Crucible, you're reading a play.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's not like, necessarily...
That's right, because it's by characters, lines, and...
Yeah, and like, there's some...
That's true.
You start out, like, Act 2, the common room of Proctor's house 8 days later. At the right of the door is an opening on the fields outside. Like, it's an opening to a scene.
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth, what keeps you so late? It's almost dark. Proctor, we're out planting far onto the edge of the forest. So, like, you are reading a play when you read this.
Yeah, that's true.
But still read it. It's so good.
It's a good book.
Very, it was inspired by the McCarthyism of the 50s. People, like you said, it's based on things that actually happened. The people actually existed. But it was inspired by his experiences with the House Un-American Activities Commission that swept through the country, swept through Hollywood a great deal. Hollywood, New York, things like that. But yeah, I agree. I'd never actually read the whole book.
Oh, really?
But, I was homeschooled. My mom was very picky and choosy. It's not that she didn't want me to read that. It's just that she wanted me to read something else more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Because, like, To Kill a Mockingbird, there were several classic things like that I read. That just never happened to be one of them.
Oh, yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird.
That book sucked.
It's a terror. I don't like
the
it.
movie's good. The book sucked. Anyway.
I thought they both sucked.
We're getting off topic. No, the Crucible, the movie, it was an actual movie. Like, it wasn't a made-for-TV movie. It was a movie, right?
Right.
With
Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder.
And that movie is absolutely phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And, like, The Crucible is on my list of books to read. Yeah. Because I want to read how it actually goes down. But it's very moving. Yeah. Very, very sad story.
Very sad. I love tragic stories, too, like that.
Yeah.
That shit is nitty-gritty, Yeah.
So, the first thing on my list is a nonfiction book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, by Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That's one that I actually want to read.
Yeah. I just got done reading this, within the last couple weeks. Mm-hmm. It's a collection of essays that he's written in various National Geographic, Physics Today. I'm making some of that up, but shit like that. It is a collection of essays that he and his editorial team took together and made into cohesive chapters that follow each other. Cool. That it is exactly what the title indicates it is. It is astrophysics and physics, the history of the universe in such a way that people without any background in science whatsoever could have a somewhat conversation about it and know some facts. Mm-hmm. I watch a lot of documentaries on physics, anthropology, paleontology, things like that. So I know enough lingo to be dangerous for a lot of these things. So I knew some of what he was talking about, but I am not a scientist by any means. And I found this book very enjoyable. I found it very interesting. I learned a lot of things that I did not know before. One of the very first things he goes over.
Neil deGrasse Tyson's quite a...
He's quite a guy.
He's quite a guy.
Very interesting.
Huge brain. He knows his shit.
But, one of the first things he goes over is that, the universe started before the Big Bang. The universe started, it was estimated to be about 1 trillionth the size of a period on a piece of paper. Yeah. That's before the Big Bang. That's what it was. Something smaller than an atom, just very randomly poof. Mm-hmm. And the universe existed. Like that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. I don't know. It's a very interesting book. I thought he was very well written. And two, to know that it was a collection of essays, to know that it wasn't just something that he sat down and wrote. You wouldn't have ever known, I think, if you didn't already know.
Interesting.
Because something like that could come out very choppy.
Yeah.
And this really wasn't. This was very cohesive.
I've read books that are like that, where it's choppy with people trying to put together something in a book, and it's like, I don't know.
So what's the first thing on your list? Or the second thing on your list?
Second one I have is Dreams from My Father by Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is a memoir of his. And I read this a couple of years back.
You borrowed that from me, didn't you?
I believe that I did, actually. And it's the only book of his that I have read.
Of course, he's only written 2.
So I'm not on a bad track right
50%.
now.
50%. That's pretty
50%.
good.
I can still.
Just have to hope he doesn't come up with another one here in the next couple of
Then
years.
I got to start picking up the pace. But no, I really enjoyed this book. It was very insightful on his childhood and his coming up and his upbringings and how he got into politics and living with a single mother and his troublesome relationship with his father. And it was it's wild. It's very sad. Mm-hmm. It's a very sad book. It's very touching, and President Obama he had such a way with words.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a very formal, well-spoken man, and it's that shows in his writing too.
Yeah.
Especially this one, regardless of
political
leanings and viewpoints and stuff like that. He was in my opinion, a fantastic guy, but also a fantastic writer too. There's not many former presidents or politicians in general who can. They write plethoras of books. Everyone's written a book, but a lot of it's just. And no, a lot of them are
they
not
sell because people want to know some of the dirty secrets that happened while they were in office.
And it has that, Hillary Clinton can write a book just because she's trying to win a campaign or because...
Her last book was What Happened, talking about why she thought she lost.
It doesn't even sound like, oh, yay, I want to hear about that,
Yeah.
But, like, Dreams from My Father, that's interesting. And for presidents, too, to write something that,
especially before they were presidents.
Yeah.
Like, he was a congressman or a senator when he wrote that.
And, that's not something that you see a lot of senators and congressmen and stuff like that write about. And so, but and I don't think none of them had quite a past like he did.
Yeah.
He had an interesting story and an interesting life.
Yeah.
And it was definitely worth writing about. And so I do recommend people give that a try. Obviously, true story.
That is one thing that I want to read. Like I said, I think you borrowed that book from me. I got it from a friend of my grandparents for my birthday one year because I was into presidents growing up.
Of course.
But I never got the chance to read it. That is something that I do want to read because
read it, and you have it. Yeah. But yes, that's fantastic stuff.
It's another president who wrote before while they were a senator, JFK. Mm-hmm. He wrote his thesis, I think, was Why England Slept, talking about the lead up to World War II.
Interesting.
That is available. That was published, and it is available. Something else he wrote before he was president while he was a senator. He wrote Why England Slept when he was in college before he was in politics.
Oh, wow.
But he wrote Profiles in Courage. It looks at a handful of senators from history. It was written in the early to mid 50s, I think. It looks at a handful of senators before that, obviously, that regardless of party or whatever, Kennedy was a Democrat, he looks at people regardless. But senators that, courageous. They stood up to do things for what was right, regardless of what people said they should do or what the party wanted them to do or things like that.
Right.
And like a lot of presidents don't write until after, which is always interesting because obviously people write to get money, that's a benefit.
They write after to sound more relevant.
Again, to get money because
make money from the books.
To make money from the books.
And also be like, hi, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like to be a junior senator from Massachusetts or Illinois from either case, that Kennedy, he didn't need any money. He was from one of the wealthiest bootlegging families from the early 19th century. Obama, he I'm sure he could have used the money, but I mean, I think that speaks to
He
something.
grew up in a very poor.
Yeah.
I mean,
Regardless
he
of
definitely picked up by the bootstraps to
Yeah.
get where he's at. Yeah.
But regardless of wealth or something like that, I
where
think
you
to be a senator, to be a young senator like both of them were, obviously speaks to a drive and motivation
Definitely.
and dedication, and I think that can be reflected too in early writings like that.
So, anyways, what's next on your list?
The next on my list is God No by Penn Jillette. Obviously, we just talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
So the full title, let me pull it up here. Full title is God No, God, comma, no, exclamation. Signs you may be an atheist and other magical tales. Obviously, his books are about religion, atheism, but his view on religion as a whole, not just Christianity.
Okay.
Definitely I would recommend this to anybody. I'm looking on the back of the book here. Glenn Beck wrote a review. I mean, someone conservative and I would assume Christian like that. Said it was funny, provocative, and profane.
Interesting.
Richard Dawkins, Lawrence O'Donnell, several
Nice.
other people spoke very highly of the book. I very much enjoyed this book. It's broken down instead of chapters. It's broken down into commandments. There's 10 commandments, obviously. He talks about various things in each of them. Regardless of your faith, the questioning of your faith, or the definitiveness of it, or the lack thereof. Lack of faith at least. Very interesting book. I would recommend it to anybody. What's last on your list?
The last on my list is Good Omens.
Okay. Ooh, that was good.
By Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of English gents who wrote another, what I would kind of say, it had like a Monty Python-like comedy to it, as far as the Crowley was the devil and Aziraphale was the angel, and they had this funny, dynamic duo of, trying to watch the Antichrist and doing, the devil's work and the end of the world apocalypse things, but in a very fun way.
It was a fun miniseries to watch.
On Amazon, yes, it
Yeah.
was. And the writing of it was just hilarious. The characters are great. And, there's a lot of philosophical, like, in-depth messages in there. And so it's not just purely comedy or a comedic book. It's a drama, too. But they did a brilliant job writing this. And I'm not surprised it became a limited series on Amazon. But it's an easy read, easy to get into, and I think if you enjoyed the series, you definitely enjoyed the books. It's not that off, and but regardless if you have or haven't, I recommend you give it a shot. It's not anything bashing or joking on like beliefs and stuff. It's just taking, biblical events and characters and putting it into a fun take, a more English comedy take. But it's definitely it's good writing. So, and did you have one more?
I actually have two more. That was the end of your list, wasn't it?
It was.
Okay, we should have gone in the reverse order. So my next one would be The Woman Who Wouldn't by Gene Wilder.
Oh, okay.
Out of everything he's written, this was by far my favorite. Again, it's a very, very quick little book. Set at a health spa in Germany or Switzerland. I don't remember which.
Okay.
I've read this book multiple times. I absolutely love it. I haven't read it in a while. But set around the turn of the century, there are some historical figures. Anton Chekhov, I believe. It's not a Russian poet or a Russian writer who actually lived there in the last years of his life. He had tuberculosis. He is one of the prominent secondary characters of the book.
Okay.
It's a very, very good book. I don't want to give away too much about the plot, but this musician goes there to kind of just relax after having a mental breakdown in a performance. Meets this mysterious woman, and there you go. If you want to know more, go read it.
Interesting.
Very, very good book. Very moving book. I think one of Gene Wilder's best works.
Is it a short story?
I mean,
or more like a novella?
It's more like a novella. Like it's a short, squatty book.
Okay.
Maybe 150, 200 pages, something like that. I honestly, when I first read it, I was 12 or 13, and I read it in a single afternoon.
Oh, I bet.
I started it at like 2, and I was done by 4 or 5.
5 years old? Just kidding.
Oh my god. I was just so enthralled with it, even at such a young age, and even when I read it today, it's still just as moving, just as interesting. There are some comedic aspects to it, some drama, you name it.
Cool.
And then last but not least is Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
A classic, and I tried to split these up, tried to recommend something for everybody. 2 nonfiction books, 2 fiction books.
Oh, okay.
Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, that's nonfiction science.
Sure.
God No, that's nonfiction philosophy, religion, things like that. The Woman Who Wouldn't, I would really put that under fiction in the romance section more so than anything.
Yeah.
And then Sherlock Holmes is your fiction, your drama and adventure. So I tried to do something for everybody with this.
Little detective stuff. Oh.
Sherlock Holmes, there's so much in Sherlock Holmes to read, or that you could read. This is another one of those things that I have one of the Barnes & Noble collections of. The whole book, the whole collection, The Complete Sherlock Holmes is what it's called. The whole damn thing is
long.
fucking 1,077 pages.
Yeah.
It's a big fucker.
See, again, one of those commitments. I mean, you could always do a short story here and there.
And see,
drop it. Yeah.
That's what I would recommend. So it starts out with a novel, A Study in Scarlet. It goes in chronological production order.
A Study in Scarlet. Yeah.
So it starts out with a novel. I mean, I say novel. It's smaller print, something like that. Like, it's not giant print. It's, if you have a hard time reading, or if you usually need
reading
medium
glasses.
to large size, you would definitely need your reading glasses for this.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, being smaller print, it's 71 pages. Now, you could easily do the font up a point or two, and it would probably be 100, 150. Mm-hmm. But it's still relatively short. But again, I digress. You have a novel, A Study in Scarlet. You have another novel. Then you have The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which is a series of short stories. The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, all 3 of those are short stories. And then His Last Bow, and The Case Book are short stories as well. There's 3 other novels in there. But yeah, don't feel like you have to read the whole thing.
For sure.
Go and that's a very daunting for anybody. 1,000 pages is a big fucking commitment. But there are tons of short stories in there. Go and read some. You don't have to have read any of the others to really have to know what's going on. They might mention some here or there, I mean, me and you both saw that. But very classic. There's a reason that they've been adapted so many times.
Oh, definitely.
The characters are very interesting. A little bit different, regardless of how many adaptations you've seen, whether you've seen the Robert Downey Jr. ones.
The BBC with Benedict
Cumberbatch. Johnny Lee Miller in Elementary and Lucy Liu. That was one of my favorites personally.
Yeah.
Or even going older back, like Peter Cushing or Basil Rathbone.
Old school.
Some of those went off the
those
rails
are my
from the
grandpa's
book.
favorite.
But regardless of how many adaptations you've seen, I mean, we've seen, between the 2 of us, we've probably seen 4 or 5 different adaptions.
Probably, yeah.
Regardless of how many you've seen, the the books are different. How they are in the books is always a little bit different from the adaptions.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely, that's definitely something I would recommend for anybody. I found it enthralling. So, look at that. You were worried that we weren't going to have enough topics to cover, and we're already over an hour.
That's what I like to see. Nice.
So, okay. We hope you enjoyed this.
Yes.
Our previous episode should have been on evolution. As of the speaking of this, I guess, we're publishing it tomorrow. And then I don't know what our next topic will be.
We'll have time to
discuss.
discuss.
We've done a couple outside of the movie realm, so we might go back to that.
Trying to
We want to spread
some
it out.
variety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We might go back to movies. We might go over some TV.
Or something.
Or we might go somewhere else. You never know.
Yeah, true.
That's the adventure with us. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Either tune in next time.
Like a box of chocolates, right? Hey, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.